Good evening to the roughly 1 dozen of you who will ever watch this video. As time has gone on, my video views have gone way down, and then word got out about how grades are frozen and they've plummeted. So, pretty much making this video talking to myself, which is what is giving my depression beard the strength to continue its ever trashier growth. But I'm here, and the depression has not overtaken me fully yet, so I figured, hey, I got one more PowerPoint to show before the Civil War begins. Might as well continue on doing it, even though most of you will never see or hear it. As always, check your grades. They can't go down. They can't go down, but some of you guys who have Bs, you should probably have an A by the end of all of this if you just do some work. So just make sure nothing's falling through the cracks. Just so you guys know the itinerary, and we all know what the plan is right now. Today, you have this video. Going to plow through it real quick because there's not a whole lot there. That'll be the last part before we have the Civil War. Next class will be another quiz on Schoology that like 3 of you will probably take. No harm done if you do poorly on it because your grade can't go down. So even if it does temporarily after that quiz, don't worry about it. I'll fix it. Don't fret. And then the Civil War, which is normally my favorite unit. It's normally most people's favorite unit. Unfortunately, none of you will see this, so you'll never. Oh man. Positive thoughts. All right. The most positive of all is there's less than a month left. I am recording this video on the 27th of April. So 1 month to go on the calendar from here. Just about over. Just a few more of these videos I'll be making to plow through the Civil War so I can at least sleep at night knowing I tried to do my job, even if most of you didn't get the content. So, oh well, can't be helped, I guess. Real quick, just for the few of you who are back from part 5, the 3 things we talked about last time. The Dred Scott decision, where the slave Dred Scott sued for his freedom, failed, was told that not only does he have to remain a slave, but that he's not allowed to sue because he nor any other person of African descent is a citizen or can ever be a citizen. Repealed things like the Missouri Compromise and popular sovereignty, and stopped Congress's ability to stop the spread of slavery into the territories. Obviously, the South is going to love this. This is what people like John C. Calhoun had been saying for a while. The North, super furious. Sectionalism, all-time high. The Lincoln-Douglas debates, those 2 gentlemen will be coming back today. So let's make sure we remember who Abraham Lincoln, Republican from Illinois, running for Senate against Stephen A. Douglas, Democrat from Illinois. Douglas wins the seat after 7 very famous debates all over the state of Illinois. Lincoln, though, becomes a very well-known politician, becomes very famous for his wit, for his silver tongue, if you will. Really makes a name for himself there in 1858, debating Douglas, even though he ultimately loses a fairly close election. Lincoln, of course, is anti-expansion of slavery. He's still not super anti-slave. Well, he's anti-slavery, but he's not coming out saying, I want to abolish it. He's saying, I don't want it to expand. Whereas Douglas is still on his hobby horse of popular sovereignty, aka let the people decide. Both technically illegal thanks to the first part with the Dred Scott decision. Last thing we talked about was John Brown's raid, where crazy old John Brown comes back. Says he allegedly wants to start a slave rebellion by taking over the federal arsenal in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Fails, becomes a hero, becomes a martyr to those in the North when he is put to death by hanging, becomes a huge villain and boogeyman in the South. But at this point, something has to give. Because we're here in 1859, this sectionalism has been growing at a rapid pace for 40 years, and it has culminated in essentially a domestic terrorist attack. So things are at an all-time high. Don't worry, they're about to get much, much worse, starting with the breakup of the Democrats. So the Democratic Party is one of two major parties at this time, right? We have the Republicans, but they're only in the North. The Democrats are in the driver's seat to win from here on out in national elections, right? Mostly for the presidency. They are in the driver's seat because they're the only party that is national. They're the only party that, up to this point, can run one guy who's going to get some votes in the North and some votes in the South. But that's all going to change heading into the presidential election of 1860. And just like the Whigs, they are going to divide over the issue of slavery, right? And the early 1850s, the Whigs couldn't decide what their platform should be on slavery, and the party died. From their ashes, the Republican Party formed in the North. But the Democrats face the same conundrum going into the 1860s. People in the North are now, enough Democrats in the North are now not comfortable with the Democratic platform of, heck yes, slavery can expand. Not everyone in the North is saying it absolutely should not expand and are fully Republicans. There are Northern Democrats, but they can't agree with Southern Democrats. And so heading into this presidential election of 1860, the party doesn't die. It just temporarily splits into a Northern Democratic faction and a Southern Democratic faction. With that, it is going to pave the way for a Republican, Abraham Lincoln, to win in 1860. Whereas if the Democrats could have agreed on a platform where they all stay together and nominate one candidate, they would have had a great chance of winning the election. As it turns out, they're going to break up, at least temporarily, and that's going to pave the way for everything that's about to happen. And what's going to happen? Lincoln's elected. We head into one of the craziest elections here in 1860. It's another one where we don't just have two guys running, like in 1824 when John Quincy Adams won in the House. 4 guys running. This time we have 4 guys again. Except this is even stranger because instead of it being 4 people on the ballot, what this election really is 2 different two-person elections. So let me explain. We have 4 people who technically run. You have Abraham Lincoln, who is a Republican. He is against the spread of slavery. He's against the spread of slavery. He says it again and again. There is a man named John Breckinridge. He is going to be a Democrat who runs in the South. He is for the unlimited spread of slavery, which is technically the only constitutional platform here, right? He is running on a platform that the Supreme Court has said, hey, that's fine. Whereas Lincoln is running on one that the Supreme Court has already said, no, you can't do anything about it. Doesn't stop Lincoln, doesn't stop the Republican Party. We also have Stephen A. Douglas, our nemesis from Lincoln, from the Lincoln-Douglas debates. He's running as a Northern Democrat who's running on the platform of popular sovereignty, right? There are obviously other issues, like Republicans are much more for tariffs and Democrats are much less for tariffs, but that is not the issue, right, in 1860. That's not what is affecting most people's votes. It's slavery. And Stephen A. Douglas says, hey, I know what the Supreme Court said. I know that technically we can't use this, but we should use popular sovereignty. We should let people in these territories decide. That will solve everything. Why he thought that, I honestly don't know. I need to do some more personal research because we've tried this in Kansas and it hasn't worked, right? Bleeding Kansas is still going on. It's still not a state. I don't know why Stephen A. Douglas thought this was such a great idea, but this is the platform that he's running on. And then there is a second John Bell. He's running in a brand new party called the Constitutional Union, and they essentially just say, shh, union above all, just shh. And when voters are like, yeah, but what should we do about slavery? They go, shh. Don't talk about it. Find a compromise, whatever. But their basic platform is let's stay together, right? Let's not get divorced as a country. So you have these 4 guys, right? The big forehead himself, although they all kind of have huge foreheads in this picture. So we have Lincoln who's saying, hey, slavery can stay where it is, but it cannot expand. Douglas is saying slavery can stay where it is, and it can expand if people want it to. John Breckinridge is saying it can go everywhere, it can go anywhere. That's what the Supreme Court said. And then there's John Bell, who's saying, let's just avoid it, right? And so they are going to really divvy up different parts of the country. In fact, a lot of these guys don't appear as candidates in other parts of the country. For example, Lincoln isn't even on the ballot in like 10 southern slave states, which is going to be a phrase I'm going to hate to say again and again in the future because of my lisp. But Lincoln, like, you can't even vote for him if you're in Florida. So really, like I said before, this is a two different two-man elections where Lincoln is running against Douglas in the north, and Breckinridge is running against Bell in the South. And that is reflected in the voting patterns, where you see Lincoln wins every free state. Every state that has banned slavery goes for Lincoln. The one kind of asterisk to that would be New Jersey. You can see that they gave 3 of their 7 electoral votes. They split it, and they gave 3 to Douglas. But every state that allows slavery is going to go for either Douglas in the case of Missouri, or Breckinridge for the most part in the Deep South. And then you have Bell here on the border. In these states especially, you got to remember they allow slavery here in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia, but each of those states have a big Appalachian populations and mountainous terrain and places that are not super gung-ho for slavery, like what becomes West Virginia and parts of Kentucky and Tennessee as well. So they go for the compromise candidate because they're afraid of what would happen if there's a divorce. Where do you think the fighting is going to happen, right? In these areas. But all of these states, including, people forget about Delaware, Maryland, they are slave states. They go for Breckinridge. They go for the guy saying, hey, we should follow the Supreme Court. We like slavery, or at least we think slavery should be allowed to expand, if that's what the Supreme Court said. So when the election comes about, the Democrats split the votes enough that Lincoln is able to win. He does not win much of the popular vote. In fact, if you take all of the votes cast in this election, he gets less than 40% of all of the votes. But because of the Electoral College, he does get the most votes, right, in the popular vote. He also gets the most Electoral College votes, and it is over half. It is enough, because you can just look, right? We know, if you remember how the Electoral College works, it's the number of senators, 2 plus however many people you have in the House. And the House, again, is based off of population. So the bigger the state, the more Electoral College votes it's worth. There's a lot more people in the North, right? We didn't get to go into it as much as I would have liked had we actually been in school, but for the past couple of decades, there's been a ton of immigration. All of the immigrants are going to the North, right? Because that's where jobs are. You're not going to go live in Texas. You're not going to go live in Arkansas. If you're an immigrant, if you're an Irish immigrant coming in the 1850s because your competition is slave labor, there's no cities, there's no work, there's no money there. So they're settling in places like New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, moving west. A lot of people move to California, but all the free states total enough Electoral College votes that Lincoln goes on to win, which brings us to our first activity sheet for today, which will probably be our last activity sheet because really, what's the point? There's like 10 of you who are going to turn this in. So if you're doing this, if you want to turn this in at the end of the year and get some points and try to bring a B to an A or whatever, just real quick, you would make a prediction. How is the South going to react? If you're new to the story, it shouldn't be very hard, and I'm not going to take any time. If you need it, just go ahead and hit pause, but I'm moving on because we're about done. The Southern reaction. It is what they've been threatening, and a big part of the reason that they do it is a lot of people have been saying you won't for a while, because remember, 1819, Missouri is the first time that the South started to utter the S word of secession. And I know, if you remember, they're not the first region. New England uttered secession and made threats back during the War of 1812 with the Hartford Convention, those old Federalists. But the South has been crying it again and again and again in crisis after crisis since 1819. And here they decide, you know what? It's time we're going to actually do it. They see Lincoln's election as intolerable. They call him a black Republican, and that they see his election as the death knell of slavery. They think that he's going to end slavery. They think that he is going to take their slaves. They know that he's not going to follow the law according to the Supreme Court, because his platform and all of the Republicans in Congress, their platform is not to allow slavery to expand, which is technically illegal. And so 7 southern states secede, which I hate to say, but 7 southern states secede before Lincoln even takes office. You got to remember, when you get elected, you don't take office until the next calendar year. So if you get elected in 1860, you're not going to take office until a couple months, March at this time. Today it's January of 1861, right? So, we have an election coming up this year. Whoever wins in 2020 won't be sworn in as president until January of 2021. So before Lincoln is the president, he's just President-elect Lincoln, 7 southern states secede. They believe their doom has arrived, their biggest nightmare. There is no future for them in the Union. The people who cheer for John Brown have taken power, and they've held on to it for a very long time, longer than they would have without things like the Electoral College, longer than they would have without things like the 3/5 Compromise. But all those things that were goosing their power has been overcome by immigration and the birth rate in the North. The North now essentially has more power than the South. And so the South says, all right, we're out. And starting with South Carolina on December 20th, 1860, followed shortly by Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. These 7 states secede. They form a new country, which they call themselves the Confederate States of America. They have their own constitution, which is almost identical to the United States Constitution. They put a few different tweaks in there. There's not supposed to be political parties. There's a term limit on how long the president of the Confederacy can be there. There's more things for states' rights, because that's the rallying cry of the South is, hey, we have to get out of here to protect our rights, our states' rights. South Carolina has to leave to protect South Carolina. Obviously, from what, right? What are they arguing for? States' rights for what? States' rights for slavery. So they put in a few protections for slavery in their constitution, but for the most part, they set up a government a lot like the United States government is just supposed to be more decentralized, whereas in our government, you have the national government, and then the states are below it, and there's some sharing of powers, and there's some things that only the states can do. We're seeing that, today with the response to the pandemic. The president can't do a lot of things. So the Confederacy is supposed to be where the states are much more powerful than the national government. That won't actually work out because of the way the war plays out, but that's the idea. They say, hey, we're not safe in the United States. Our institutions, our state power, right? Slavery is not safe in the Union. We're going to form our own Confederate States. They have an election. They elect their first and only president, a man with a weird name, Jefferson Davis. We're going to hear more from him going forward. Those 5 of you who probably make it all the way through the Civil War. So the map now looks very different. The dark red states, those of you who remember from your map quiz, the dark red states are now the Confederate States of America. However, the light red states, what I will call the upper South, has slavery, and the yellow states, what I will call the border states, are also slave states. The upper South is very heavily involved with slavery, just to a lesser degree than what we call the Deep South or the Confederate States. And then the border states are slave states, but have even less to do with slavery. And they're going to play big roles going forward. There's a reason this map has red, or dark red, light red, and yellow. That will become clear to the probably one of you who make it all the way through the next video even. So that is what the map is. That Kansas now, though, yay, is becoming a state. The blue are all free states. They are still in the Union. The light red, still in the Union at this point. The yellow, still in the Union at this point. So last one. If you're Lincoln, you haven't even taken the oath of office. You don't even have the powers of being the president. 7 states just say, well, yeah, and they get out of here. How do you react? How do you handle the situation? What do you do on your first day of office, right? What are you telling the South before you take the oath of office? What are you telling the light red, the yellow, the dark red, right? What are you telling the Confederacy, the Upper South, the border states? What are you doing? And as far as secession, as far as those 7 states are concerned, was their move justified? Was it smart? I mean, we know the outcome for the most part, but try to take their perspective in 1860. Your mortal enemy has taken power. Was this the right thing to do? Why? Why not? Thank you to those few of you who are still watching. I will be posting the quiz here shortly, once I have it made. And then I will be recording and uploading like 5 more videos or so on the Civil War. I'm going to try to keep them as short as I can. There's a ton of content. I've already axed a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to do this so if you guys want try to stay engaged or just get that bored, it's there. I don't know how much more I'm going to collect. As far as work goes, I've already given a bunch for those of you who have C's and want B's, or B's and A's, or whatever. But here we are. It is what it is. So feel free to reach out if you guys need anything. If any of you guys are actually interested in this and find that what I'm doing is not enough, let me know. I can do more for everyone. I can do more for you specifically. I can point you in the right direction of things to read or look up, whatever. But there we are. So, good luck. I talk to some of you guys whenever. See you whenever. Have a good one, and thanks for watching.